It is March Madness, everybody. People are gathered around the television watching college basketball as we speak, unless you're watching this in April, and it doesn't make any sense to be saying that, but it is March Madness. The one thing, though, I will say for anybody that was expecting the Chicago Bears to go out there and make a flurry of deals, it absolutely has not happened. Ryan Poles came out right during his introductory press conference, even laid out the plan that he was going to take a slow, methodical approach to free agency, and then kept to his word. That's exactly what he's done this far during free agency. And of course, Bears fans are upset. When Ryan Pace was out there throwing around money, like a guy who just landed at McCarran Airport in Las Vegas and is just throwing around money, buying Patron shots for everybody at the airport bar, Ryan Poles has done the exact opposite. It's been a slow, methodical approach, and I want to tell everybody right now that it's cool. Everything is going to be okay. We are going to have a team in September. Don't worry about it. Don't get too worked up about it, but we are going to go through some of the moves that they have made so far. And as a matter of fact, let's cut to the chase. Sammy, let's start the show.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast with Adam Ray.
Trying to cut it back. Justin Fields making magic happen. There goes Fields. Touchdown.
The sickest Chicago Bears and fantasy football podcast. Sports entertainment like no other. It's gonna be sick.
Welcome to the Sick Podcast. It is me, Adam Rank. We've got a great show for you today as, again, we are working our way through Bears free agency. Not only are the Bears, going through and making some moves, the NFL landscape is getting ready to be shifted a little bit. Deshaun Watson has not yet been traded as we're recording this. Deshaun Watson has not been traded, but based on what happened last week, that moments after we shut down the podcast, Khalil Mack was traded. I expect there to be a flurry of moves once we log off. So you know what? That's the kind of stuff that happens. So in any event, let's bring on our first guest, our first recurring guest. And you know what, George? I got to be honest with you. This has caused some dissension in the Tape Never Lies network. You know, I said I got to get Bellissimo back on one more time. I felt bad because we were shortchanged a little bit. Because number one, we didn't get through everything we wanted to talk about. And number two, we didn't get a chance to talk about Khalil Mack. And number three, Phil and Shane are upset that you're back. But thank you very much for rejoining us, George. How you doing?
I'm not sure they're upset that I'm back. It's maybe that we want to keep the tinder dry on some of the gunpowder we've got to release later ourselves. So I think there's a bit of that. But I'm doing well. I mean, it's a lot of consternation about what hasn't happened more than what has, I think, which is, for a general manager, is a pretty good sign. If people are worried about what you haven't done rather than what you have done, well, then you haven't done something bad yet. So there's always a silver lining to any action or inaction, it seems, these days. But he did, like you said, he told us what he's going to do, and that's what he's doing. And there's still plenty of value there, and there's some things to like with the guys that he's signed so far.
Yeah, what do you think, though, when you see a team like the Jacksonville Jaguars, who have been very active in free agency? Are you kind of looking at the money that they're spending, the money they gave to guys like Christian Kirk, and you're kind of relieved in a sense that Ryan Poles is actually taking a more methodical approach?
I am, because there's nothing worse than sort of being desperate and having to overpay. And it's, necessity is the driver of overpaying, and the Jaguars have been in such a bad spot with so many gaping holes, and now they've got the cap money behind them, and they've got the draft picks, and they've got the quarterback in camp. Now they see that the time is for them to make a splurge. But to be honest, they were a long way away from being a contender last year, and I'm not sure that adding a Christian Kirk at the money that they have done is going to put them over that edge. So bad teams have to spend to get people in. When I say bad teams, when the Bears signed Allen Robinson, we paid well over the odds. When we signed Mike Glennon, we outbid ourselves 2 or 3 times, it seems. So the Jaguars overpaying to get people in is not something that's new in the NFL. It's not something that's even or should be new to Bears fans. It's something that the Bears have done themselves. But the sign of a team that's kind of got it together is either those that are just making trade for pieces because everything else is there, or those that, accumulating draft picks, letting people walk away in free agency because they're already developing the next person in line behind them. And that's why you see the same teams year in, year out keep getting these compensation picks, because that's what they've been doing. They've been drafting well, they've been developing guys, and then they go away because we're not going to have massive cap on part players. We're going to spend the cap on the guys that we really have to keep, people like quarterbacks and left tackles and edge rushers, things like that. And that's the pieces that they tend to keep. And then the bit part players they let walk away and replace them with the guys that they've got going through that chain.
One of the premier players in the NFL, and obviously a premier player for the Chicago Bears, Khalil Mack, was traded just after the show that we did last week. What did you make of that deal?
I understand it. You may not like it, but you understand it. And it's Khalil Mack, when he's on, is unblockable. Like there's a very few players in the NFL that are like it, that can speed rush past one, speed to power another, run through another block, and then make a tackle with his back on your arch nemesis. And Khalil Mack is one of them. But the problem is the last 2 years he's been playing through fairly significant injuries by all accounts, playing through them and still playing well, but not playing up to the value. And when you're a team, like as mentioned, a team that needs to develop those other pieces to get better depth, to get better pieces in all, more different spots, you can't have too much money tied up in one spot. And the Bears have got, or had something like 45, nearly 50 million in cap tied up at edge rusher on a 3-4 scheme, which has now been changed to a 4-3. Cover two, nickel or 4-3 base. That's what we're changing to. Yeah, it'd be nice. It'd be nice to have Khalil Mack on one side and Robert Quinn on the other, but it's good to get that money, which Ryan Pace, as we mentioned last time, the problem with Pace was that he doubled down on Nagy, and players that Nagy couldn't get to work, or that losing Vic Fangio and then Pagano couldn't get to work, was keep throwing money and pushing it down the line, keep throwing money and pushing it down the line. Well, sooner or later that rooster comes home to nest, and there it is crowing away in the background when you've got a sickly bird that isn't running anymore, and you've got to make a decision that now is the time to get what you can, cut the bait, and then be healthier for next year.
What about Gibson, who last year came in and played very well? It feels like, with the moves that they've made, they've also released Eddie Goldman, Bilal Nichols. It feels like the replacements that they have are ready to step up right now, and they get considerably younger and considerably cheaper. It feels like a kind of a win.
Chris Tonga, your 7th round draft pick last year, Chris Tonga, the nose tackle, made Eddie Goldman replaceable. Eddie Goldman had signed a massive contract when he threw a nose tackle, a massive contract when he re-signed with the Bears, was made expendable by a 7th round rookie out of BYU, who was an older rookie, but nevertheless came in and played really well. Travis Gibson, 5th rounder, who came in very limited action, and again, heavens knows why, based upon what he did when he was on the field. And he is a 4-3 end. That's what he was in Tulsa. That's what he's going to be with the Bears this year. He came in bit part duty and got 7 sacks. So there's lots of things to like. And he plays the run very well as well, Travis Gibson, because of his length and strength. And he's spent the last 2 years working almost exclusively with Robert Quinn and Khalil Mack. And you can see it on the tape in terms of some of the moves that he's making, the way that he plays the game. So, arrow pointed up there. So, as you said, having those guys coming in, that's the whole point of what I think Ryan Poles wants to move towards. Younger guys and the free agency as well. The guys who are going to be signing second and third waves are people that are going to want a second bite of the cherry, that have got something to prove. He said that. He's actually openly said that in the press conference. So, the people that we've got coming in, like the linebacker that we signed from the Raiders, Morrow, he's coming off a year that he was not playing. He was ready to play in the playoffs, but the Raiders Raiders.
Yeah.
And so they didn't get to play in the second round, but he was ready for that. And he is a guy that you think about pairing alongside Roquan Smith, and you've got almost a mirror image of Roquan Smith. Incredibly fast. If anything, he's more physical between the tackles than Roquan Smith is, but equally as good a coverage defender. So that when we talk about the Bears, are they in rebuild or are they in retool? To me, it looks more like retool if these guys stay healthy, and that's one of the key things. Ogunjobi's managed to stay healthy in a position that is very demanding on the body, so that's a positive thing. Lucas Patrick, that's coming on the offensive line, has been solid in 3 positions on the interior, so he gives you flexibility, plus knowing the scheme, plus knowing the opponent up north that are now going to have a punter that used to be on the Bears. So, Pat O'Donnell.
Yeah.
There's something to worry about. Not.
Ha!
But at the end of the day, like I say, there's lots of things to like about the people that we have signed so far, and there's room still for optimism in terms of value in the market. And people are talking about a retool. Addition by subtraction. Matt Nagy is gone. We now have an offensive coordinator who is very competent by all accounts, an ascending quarterbacks coach who's also OC material. That replacement coming in sort of after. We have a defense which fits to being able to play better with lesser talent, providing everyone buys into the Eberflus hits mantra. Because you've got to be physical, you've got to flow to the ball, and you've got to have 11 hats on the ball at all times. That's the thing that people have got to buy into. Too many times last year, we saw the safeties roaming God knows where. We saw linebackers not sure who they're going to cover in zone. We saw defensive guys. The defensive line were getting after it, and the 2 inside linebackers were getting after it. But apart from that, we saw a lot of lack of communication and lack of sort of effort towards the second half of the season, and the Bears were still close. So for people that are all doom and gloom, addition by subtraction, a better defense which suits moderate talent to get the best out of them, and an offense now that's going to be at least not psychotic not psychotic in the play calling, the way that we're sort of just spinning a wheel of misfortune and seeing what whether we come up bankrupt or whether we come up first down on a play action reverse sweep jet motion.
Yeah, it always felt like Matt Nagy's play calling was a lot like my golf swing, where you're just like, I hope this works. I hope
too many moving parts.
Yeah, like I just hope like this is going to be okay. But it's funny because everybody, of course, was focused on the offense. They came out and said we're going to surround Justin Fields with as much talent as possible. But as you mentioned, the first move that they make was to bring in Ogunjobi, and I think it's a good move. I think it was very important for this defense. What did you think of the signing?
Yeah, 3-tech. Those that remember the Tommy Harris defense and Tank Johnson defense, you've got to have a stout interior defensive line that can get across from the snap of the ball, get through gap penetration, cause havoc in that interior part of the pocket to flush the quarterback back and to clog up the run lines in the interior, keep the linebackers clear on the run plays. And on the pass plays, allow your edge defenders to go, bend that edge and get around the corner, which Robert Quinn does fantastically. Travis Gibson does very well. Gives them a chance to get the sacks. Plus, you can then throw in a blitzer every now and again, which, to be fair, Eberflus didn't do that much. But with Morrow and with Roquan Smith, you've got 2 very, very effective blitzers that get there in a hurry. With the defensive backs that we've already got, the young players, again, people not having an opportunity to shine. Thomas Graham came on the end of last year, played fantastically well at boundary corner. He's built for a cover 2. That is him. The tape study, knowing where people are, knowing where people that can threaten his zone that are coming from other areas, and knowing when his zone responsibility is redundant, and being able to then go and help out in other zones. So again, lots of positivity in terms of the defense side of things, with guys that weren't getting opportunities last year that are going to get opportunities this year. The best 5 is going to play on the offensive line. The best wide receiver is going to play. The best running back is going to play. The best quarterback is going to play. It's that simple. They're not tied in to any stigma over who was drafted by who was signed by who. All of that's gone now. It's the best guys going to play.
Yeah, and and Ogunjobi has been so effective during his time in the NFL. Do you have some tape to show us to kind of illustrate?
We can show a couple, and hopefully I won't get into too much trouble by doing it. But if you want to pull up, tape.
Yeah, like I don't want Draft Dr. Phil to get upset with us, but Sammy, do we have some tape?
I think
I don't know. Listen,
we do a couple.
I know we're friendly. We're one play. I know. And by the way, if you hear it in the background, my friends are out watching March Madness, so there might be some things. But what are we looking at right here against the San Francisco 49ers?
So here's Ogunjobi in the position that we want him to be playing in, which is a 3-tech. So for those that don't know, just to dumb it down a bit. You got 1, 2, so 0 is there, which is nose tackle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's the positions. These are the techs. That's a 1 tech. That's a 3 tech. 3 tech is what we want him to play. So it's between guard and tackle. And the whole point is to get what we want to do on defense is to get guard and tackle, sort of guard and center, blocking one guy or this guy who's a bluff, and they want to isolate at least one of these people. So you're getting 1-for-1 blocks rather than 2-for-1 blocks, particularly when you've got a back in the backfield. So what you see is this guard has to sort of set to where he is. So he does what you call a zone step, which is just basically his right foot goes out by itself, pushes off that left towards a player. But you can see Ogunjobi's already coming towards this gap with a hand to swipe, this inside hand to then free himself in this gap. The nose tackle is also playing this shade, and we've got a blitz there. So we know in terms of that's going to be single here, that's going to be single here. He has to take him. So we're going to see a bit of a drift on this side of the line, which means Hasty, the running back's going to sort of look up the middle at 24. And you can see he's sort of saying, well, okay, well, I don't have a blitzer coming. My job is now to get out. But as you can see from Ogunjobi, this move of sort of, starting from wide, that first step deep into the actual, so across the line of scrimmage in this direction, across the line of scrimmage towards where he's just come from. There comes that hand swatting there on the inside, and then dip and rip underneath, that power there. And then you see his right leg goes stiff. He pushes up, uses his leverage to get past the guard. You got the centre now thinking, oh my God, this guy's got penetration. I need to go and help. He does, and there's a hold.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. Ogunjobi just literally pushes his way through. So we're 5 yards into the backfield already, 5, 6, 7 yard loss from a 3 tech. So just literally speed off the mark, power, using leverage, fighting the double team, winning himself through the gap to get the sack there.
Yeah,
and that's exactly the job that we're going to want him to do in this defense, is to get across the line of scrimmage and to cause havoc. If the center doesn't respect the fact that he's going to shoot a gap, then he's going to be through the gap. And that's the whole thing. He's going to be that quick off the line. It's going to make it. Anytime you get an offensive lineman thinking more, that's generally speaking, that's a good thing for the defense. So, and he does that just literally, as I say, with his athleticism and his speed to get through. Just one more. I guess again.
One more. Don't get Phil upset with us.
No, this is the last one. So here he is this time. We got Seattle's starting quarterback, or how it seems at the moment, he's going to be Seattle's starting quarterback. Drew Lock. So motion goes across. You see the zones again. So you're getting everyone doing the same thing here. So it's just basically like a slant is what you're getting on the defensive line. Again, that penetration, fighting the double team. And that shock there on the guard, you see him fight both hands off at the same time, and the centre's already turned away from him, which is bad news for Teddy Bridgewater, isn't it?
It's Bridgewater, yeah. It's not. Yeah.
So it's the backup QB going over.
I thought you were making a joke that Bridgewater was going to end up in Seattle too, and I'm like, oh, that makes sense.
No, it's just purely I didn't look at the number right. But so that's just a couple of instances, just sort of showing again the same thing, being able to quickly get across the line of scrimmage, violently with the hands, just get the guard completely off him, and then he's through the gap and finishes. And he did that 7 times from defensive tackle last year, and it was a combination of him playing nose tackle 1 and 3. So he played all 3 interior spots that we would really sort of look at him playing. He played all 3 of them, and he did them effectively. So a great signing, as I say. So that's the tape.
Yeah, and again, going back to what you were talking about with the Lovie Smith, Tommy Harris type defenses, watching him there, I know the helmets are orange, but with the dark pants, it's like I remember seeing that all the time for the Bears defense during the Lovie Smith era, and I think we're going to see an awful lot again this year. Let me ask you though, do you feel? Because we had Dave Kluge on Tuesday night, and we were talking about this a little bit. Guys like Eddie Jackson, guys like Robert Quinn, of course, carry high cap hits. Do you think that we're done releasing players? Do you think that those guys are safe for the most part, and we'll see them playing for the Bears in 2022?
I think releasing to get to a position that we want to be in to sign people, we're done with that. What we will see now is potentially waiting for teams that need pieces, so pieces that we're willing to let go of. Sort of later into getting in towards the preseason, getting into the start of the season, and possibly up to the trade deadline, because then everything is post June 1st anyway in terms of cut. In terms of league, you're allowed to do 2 designation post June 1st cuts, but you can do post then anyway. You can release players, and as you see teams do every single year, it's into the next league year then. So that's what you'll probably see. The candidates for that, I think, that remain on the roster is probably Cody Whitehair, depending upon what type of guard we can get. A guy who's had 2 down years on a row, but we'll see what he does with Coach Morgan, the offensive line coach for the Bears, and with the interior. The Patrick signing kind of gives you a bit of leeway in terms of, is he going to play centre? Yeah, he'd probably be starting centre day one right now for us over Mustafa. But we still need a right guard. We still need an improvement at left guard for me. And Eddie Jackson's the other one. If a team coming towards the playoffs wants a ball hawking safety that can play the deep centre field like a one high. Eddie Jackson is that. Just don't ask him to come down in the box and be a physical player, because it's not his wheelhouse. It never was at Alabama, and it hasn't been in the NFL. It's not what he's built to do. He's built to be deeper in the field and take the ball away, which is what he excelled at, which is why he got the extension. So a team looking for that, if they come in and sort of say, we'll give you a first round next year and a third or something ridiculous, then you say but if he's playing well, then you keep him. It's just one of those. There's no urgency now for the Bears to have to do something with how they sit currently with the cap.
Yeah, and I guess when you get into the season, you'll have a sense of the way that the year's unfolding as well. And we thought about that, and I had talked about, because I had always wanted to keep Khalil Mack, and I thought the sense of it was of course keep him. I think what the Chargers offered was great. We're getting a second and we're getting rid of all that money. That's a move that you have to make, even as tough as it is to see one of your favorite players leave. But sometimes the business of football just has to take over. The one thing, though, that I think the Bears fans have been the most upset about is the lack of progress on the offensive side of the football. But I do want to give you a little bit of credit here. You called the Lucas Paul signing. We were trading DMs. I know you tweeted it out, that you screen grabbed it. You thankfully took out all the naughty words I was saying ahead of that before you showed everybody. But what are we getting there? I think that was a definite improvement, and I think it was a good move.
Packers O-linemen, generally speaking, are well coached, and they are crafty as well, I would say.
They cheat, is what you're saying.
Well, they get the benefit of the referee's love, is what the way I would phrase it. But Lucas Patrick, what we get with him is craft and aggression on the interior of the offensive line. So he's very adept. He can snap the ball fine. He can play centre absolutely legitimately. And the one thing that he does have is he has a want to block. He has good athleticism, generally speaking, at the position. And he's able to get out in front on the zone scheme that we're running, and both pass block, which he needs to make sure he keeps his feet active there. That's the one area that at times he does sort of get a little bit stale with his feet. But generally speaking, a good run blocker can block a nose tackle one-on-one, which is, again, something that Bears weren't able to do last year. And he's very good at what we call combo blocking, zone blocking. So the first guy comes up and takes half a man, second one comes and joins, and then the first man releases and the second one takes over. So whether he's first or second to that combo block, he does both well. So in terms of getting people moving in the run game, there were several times last year Angelo Blackson, Akeem Hicks and Eddie Goldman felt that impact from Lucas Patrick. So if you can block that interior, we had a pretty good interior last year with those guys.
Yeah.
If you can block that, then you can block most fronts. Not everyone has 3 Aaron Donalds on their defensive line. The Rams don't even have 3 Aaron Donalds on their defensive line. They only have 1 unicorn, and it's again, it's a great move because he's gonna be a tone setter, and that aggression, other than Tevin Jenkins, who if I'd tried to drum it out of him, nobody else had that sort of vim and vigor to go and smack people in the mouth and then follow it up with a second one if they talk back or look at the quarterback and look at the quarterback in an inappropriate way. So he definitely gives you that, and as I say, in terms of the impetus he's able to generate movement on the line of scrimmage, which is exactly what we need. So we need the attitude, we need the being able to knock people off the ball, and being he's very adept as well at looking for work, what we call, again, looking for work. If you don't have someone to block, you go and find someone to block. He loves that because there's nothing he likes more than knocking someone on the back, which as a former offensive lineman, you've got to appreciate that want in a player. So yeah, very encouraging from that point of view.
And it feels like Ryan Poles has a certain type of archetype that he wants on the offensive line. And I think for a lot of people, they were upset that James Daniels was able to walk away. And for me, I try to take the approach of Ryan Poles has evaluated, and Ian Cunningham have evaluated this situation. They see the type of player that he is. And while talented, I think that they felt that he wasn't going to fit. And I think that I don't know. I understand that people want to get upset and they want to make, you want to have an opinion about these things, but at some point, I think you have to trust the decision makers right now. Ryan Poles has not given us a reason to not believe in him yet. So I think it was kind of, it's disappointing to see these guys go, but and I know that I come off like a shill. I think that it must have been the right move to let James Daniels go. I will root for him in Pittsburgh, but I still think that, hey, we're probably going to be better off.
My area of disappointment from that deal was that James Daniels, we never saw the best of him because we never saw him in the position that he played in college and was best at, which was center. We had him moved left guard, center, and right guard, and moved across that interior. Same thing we did with Carl Long when he came in. He was a left tackle at Oregon. We moved him to right tackle, then right guard, and basically ruined the potential of what he had. The same has happened with James Daniels. The one thing that can be said about James Daniels, which is possibly the reason why he's been let go, is because he wasn't seen as a great communicator on the offensive line, which is why he wasn't playing centre. And he didn't show particularly high levels of aggression, again, that we're seeing from, the Lucas Patrick signing. So those things. The thing that you do get, though, is a guy that can one-on-one and has consistently, when he's played against Aaron Donald, done very well. And that's the high watermark for me. If you can block Aaron Donald, you can block anyone in the NFL. So whilst he might not be the most vocal, he might not be the most aggressive interior offensive lineman, he was a more competent offensive lineman than Cody Whitehair last year or Sam Mustafa. So if there's gonna be a casualty, and that Khalil Mack made it so you could have re-signed him, for my mind, I would have thought it would have been worth the while, at least having him for at least one more year or a couple of years, and say, okay, you can hit free agency again. You're only 24. You can hit free agency at 26. We'll give you $30 million over the next 2 years, so you most that money up front, so you can trade him next year without a cap hit if it doesn't work out this year. You could have at least tried a deal like that, because the deal he signed with was it Pittsburgh? Yeah, the deal he signed with Pittsburgh, I think, was only like $8-9 million a year.
Not a big number.
Yeah, not a massive number. So it's one that I think would have been worthwhile trying him. But at the end of the day, he's gone, and the reason why is because we've got someone who's a bit of a glass eater that's come in from the Packers. He's going to knock people over and enjoy doing it and let them know. And if someone touches the quarterback in an inappropriate way, he's going to go with the table and drop it over the back of the head like a WWE fighter or something. But
it's going to be like Sabu, just dropping people on tables.
That's it, or Bills fans who also do that. So it's one of those things that it was missing. It was missing from the offensive line, and the guys that showed that impetus, the rookies that should have been playing all of the second half of last year, as you previously said, and other guests have previously said, those guys didn't get the opportunity, and we have too many unanswered questions on whether they can do it to not have a definite on the line. And Lucas Patrick is that, and James Daniels wasn't.
Yeah, that was the one thing. I think that, initially, once without seeing what the next move was, even though you called it. I thought that if you're telling me we're trading James Daniels for Lucas Patrick, I'm like, okay, that's fair. That's hopefully the referees will still view him in the same vein. Like, hey, like he was once a Packer, let him get away with that. But I go back to the attitude, and it's one of those things. And I just want to have a tough football team. That is the one thing that I want. I just want a tough football team. And I know, and we get it, you see it, you mix it up in the comments, and people will be like, well, I don't want dumb penalties. And I'm like, sometimes those are necessary. And yeah, you don't want Javon Wims type penalties and Tony Miller out there getting baited by cornerbacks, but you do want to have a number of tone setters out there to be like, we can't touch Justin Fields or else something is going to happen.
Yeah, dumb penalties are always worse on defense because they keep drives going rather than kill them. If you've got a decent offense, then if your quarterback is going to get smashed and out of the game, you're pretty much done with as a game if your starter is out and you're having to go to a backup. So if you're not going to stand up and protect your quarterback and let them know from the very outset that they can expect retribution immediately and from that point forward, if you're not willing to do that for your franchise, which is stood behind you, accepting the ball from center exchange, then there is no time to do it for anyone else. On defense, you can keep drives alive with dumb penalties, which we saw last year with the Bears. It's much more costly from that point of view. If you go and get a personal foul on the offense on first or second or third down, you can punt the ball away. Yeah, it's not a problem. Worst case scenario, you punt the ball away, you keep your QB alive, and that's the difference. Is if someone's gonna stand over your running back, you push them off the ball and you help your running back up. If someone hits your QB late, you go and hit them, and you hit them hard. And if you get a penalty for it, you don't throw punches because you're going to get ejected. But you can legitimately, just after the whistle or just after they've decided to hit your QB, if you're the first person there because you've been hustling, you go and lay some timber on them and you deal with the flags after. And again, if you live to punt the ball away, you're a happy man, and so is your QB for having someone defending.
And a lot of times too, if you're hustling and you're on the ball, like if Tevin Jenkins, and this is where the lesson should have come, is like, you come in and light that guy up, let him swing on you and draw the penalty yourself. Like a lot of times the first person there does not get flagged. So if you have that mentality, and it feels like this is what Eberflus wants to do, have hustlers, have guys that are holding the other team accountable. If that's the type of roster that we're building, I think that's good. And again, it's disappointing to see some of these guys. And listen, I'm with you. Like ultimately, like I wanted to keep Khalil Mack. I wanted to keep James Daniels. I like these players, but I have to have the understanding of like, you know what? This general manager knows what he's doing. He's got a vision for this. I think he's doing the right thing. And so I don't want to panic too much. And then I start looking at the wide receiver position and I'm like, okay, we still have to have wide receivers.
It's a very good draft. It's a very good draft.
Is that what we're going to do? Are we going to draft 4 guys? Like, what's going to happen?
No, there's still plenty of guys out there that can be more than serviceable.
No, I heard on Twitter there's only 2 guys left. That's it.
Well, yeah, apparently. I mean, allegedly that's the case. I mean, I'm just quickly looking through the free agents that are currently left at wide receiver. So your guy Auden Tate's still out there. He's still got
my gosh!
Adam Robinson, Will Fuller, T.Y. Hilton, Juju Smith-Schuster, Sammy Watkins, Jameson Crowder, Cordero Patterson, Albert Wilson, Demarcus Robinson, Traquan Smith, Odell Beckham Jr. He's pretty good, so I hear.
Yeah.
There's still a number of names out there. Marcus Valdez-Scantling. I know people talk about his drops, etc., but if Aaron Rodgers is coming out and saying he was our one consistent deep threat, probably something worth having on your roster. But there's plenty of guys still out there that could be more than serviceable at sort of a 2 or a 3 or 4 on your team. Darnell Mooney hasn't gone anywhere as far as I'm aware. We've got Daz Newsome from last year that didn't really get a look in, that showed some ability when he did come in, albeit in terrible weather when he came in on the offense. It's not all terrible, and as I say, if you can get a couple of vets, the right kind of vets that can be consistent 2s or 3s, as long as you've got 3 people you can throw to, it's not a problem.
Yeah,
run the ball first. We've got pretty good running backs. That opens up play action for Justin Fields. And if there isn't anyone open, or if they're not going to catch the ball, he'll just take off himself.
Yeah, and there's a lot of great options already. Still, or a lot of great options out there. I mean, just going through that list. I know that if we sign somebody like Juju Smith-Schuster, I'm ready to draw the sword and to go out on Twitter and defend this move. But it's like we've seen everybody spend audacious amounts of money, and the Bears have been very, very wise, I think, to stay out of that. Like I like Christian Kirk. Like I'm a fan of his. But for the money that he's getting paid to go to Jacksonville, it's like, dude, you could have just signed MVS. Like he would do the same job for you because he's just a field stretcher. And I think that I think it'll be okay. Like that, I feel like that's what I keep repeating on these shows on Twitter is like, it's going to be okay. We're not starting the season on Monday. We've got plenty of time to fill these rosters.
There's plenty of time.
Who do you want to see that? I know we actually talked about this, but is there anybody that as we're now 1 week through free agency, some of the scuttlebutt out there, is there one guy you're like, well, maybe we should take a look at him?
Well, the guys that I kind of think that we should be taking a look at are ones that are going to be knowledgeable to the system. So a guy that, again, doesn't seem to have any mention at all. Gerald Everett, the tight end, because we do need a bit of help at tight end. I think, is Tonyan a restricted free agent?
I think he's restricted. I think they did give him a tender.
Yeah, so Tonyan is a UFA. So Tonyan is a UFA.
Oh my gosh, okay.
Yeah, so Robert Tonyan would make an absolute ton of sense for the Bears, given the fact that he knows Getsy, he knows the offense that he's going to want to run, the way he's going to want to run it. Traquan Smith is a guy that I really like for a West Coast offense-based system out of the Saints. Again, one of the younger free agents that's out there, very good, consistent wide receiver, and Valdez-Scantling to stretch the field. But you've still got fallback positions like, Equinemius St. Brown would make some sense as a depth piece. I'm not talking about as an alpha number one wide receiver. And I think that's where the Bears are going to have to focus their attention on the first pick of the draft or second at the very least. One of their 2 second-round picks is going to be an alpha type wide receiver that they're going to have to go and get early so that they've got their one in waiting on the roster for a relatively cheap price. I think that's more likely because there isn't really, other than Allen Robinson now on the market, Julio Jones, you could probably say still fits that even at the age that he is, that a legitimate number one wide receiver in the NFL. Those are the guys, and Julio Jones wouldn't cost you compensatory draft picks because he was released. So again, there's some options out there. And
let me ask you about Julio though. Like I get it, like he's a big name, but I still think that if Julio is healthy, I think whatever you get out of him, he would be a great addition. Like I think that would be a wise pickup.
Yeah, if you at the end of the day, the guy consistently throughout his career has produced not just as a speed guy, but as a move the chains, as a touch. Well, not so much red zone it seems in his career. He hasn't got the touchdowns, but in the red zone. But the ones he has got have generally been big gains. But in terms of someone who's going to be consistently productive, then yeah, he's definitely that. But he will take the attention of a one wide receiver, and that's the key for. Yeah, you want the production. The production has to be there to a degree, but not every wide receiver is going to get 1,600 yards and 11 touchdowns every year. And if you're spreading the ball out to a greater number of receivers, and you're getting 4 or 5 wide receivers get 4 or 5 touchdowns, that's probably a healthier offense than one guy that is getting 12, and you've got nothing else on your roster as wide receivers. It's far more difficult to take one piece away, to take 5 pieces away than it is to take one. And if you're able to spread the ball about, spread the touchdowns about, then it means the defense has to worry about more parts.
No, absolutely. And I know that I always have to check myself because obviously I delve into fantasy football quite a bit. So when I see things like Julio and Darrington Evans, who we signed recently, talking about him. Yeah, I'm like, if it's not going to cost us a lot of money, I think that it's worth having. He is the kind of player that I would absolutely go out there and buy his jersey and throw it on and be like, if nothing else, we can at some point when he's going into the Hall of Fame be like, yeah, he played for the Bears. Like he was he was our Jared Allen when he eventually gets in or something like that. But I think he can be very productive. You did mention, though, talking about taking a alpha with one of our 2 first round or one of our 2 second round picks. What do you think about taking wide receiver? Is that a possibility for the Bears in the second round?
Depending upon who they are, yeah. I mean, absolutely. If you're thinking about, and again, you need different types. Really, you wouldn't go after the same type. So, guy that I absolutely love and think is a complete alpha that is looking like he's probably going to be there in round 2 is George Pickens, the wide receiver out of Georgia. He is an alpha. He's a number 1 wide receiver in the NFL for me. But then names after that you're looking at is like John Mechie, who's like a typical. He's your in addition to kind of guy. Or you got Calvin Austin, who's a slot nightmare, start monster. Your Tyreek Hill, dare I say, kind of option that you're going to look at. Wan'Dale Robinson out of Kentucky, another guy that is an absolute nightmare for teams. And if you want a sort of a field stretcher, you could do worse than Alec Pierce out of Cincinnati, the wide receiver. He's again more of a linear route runner, downfield threat, but again, fantastic hands and a great catch radius. So you've got, again, options for different types. And in terms of the second round range, that sort of second round, George Pickens, David Bell, John Mechie, Calvin Austin, all of those guys are probably second round type values. But it depends upon what we do on the interior of the offensive line, because we've got to answer both guard positions and centre. And we do need some depth in free agency at wide receiver. But it's going to be depending upon where we're sitting and how healthy we look in terms of parts in those particular positions. I think will dictate what we do in round 2 with both of those picks. But I think definitely one of them is going to be a wide receiver. It's going to be one of those alpha types, the legitimate number 1 wide receiver.
Yeah, you've got me fired up for Pickens. And if it doesn't happen now, I'm going to blame you. And I'm going to be very upset if it does. Like, I've got my heart set on it. And it's just one of those things.
Watch the Packers take him in round 1, and then we're worried about it for the rest. Honestly.
Why would you even say a thing like that? Like, why?
Because hopefully that doesn't happen. That's the whole point. If I put it out there, it doesn't happen, and we're okay.
I'm sure there's a quarterback that they're looking at right now to pick to back up Jordan Love at some point. I will say this, though, because last time we were together, which was a week ago, Khalil Mack was traded. It feels like we're on the cusp of something big with Deshaun Watson. To change it a little bit, what do we think? Like, I know we talked about this before the show, but where do you think that Deshaun Watson is going to end up?
I think from everything I hear, it's going to be the Saints. So that would be the best fit in terms of the pieces that they've got on their offense, other than Taysom Hill. It would make sense to have a guy. He would make that offense far more dynamic. It would be a move away from what they had with Breeze. And last year they didn't have much of anything other than Jameis's resurgence and then subsequent breakdown. But it would make sense. It would make sense in that sort of NFC South for the Saints, for them to have him down there. I think it'd be a better environment for him, providing he can keep himself clean of drama and accusations. And I'm sure that will get addressed through the civil courts and that sort of side of things. There is never, just to be serious for a second, there's never a satisfactory outcome from accusations of that nature. But nevertheless, if justice is served in one shape or another for the women making the allegations and for Deshaun Watson, then if he gets that sorted and behind him, then he can be a good quarterback anywhere. But I do believe it's probably going to be the Saints. And again, in terms of the weapons that they've got available to them, it would benefit him. They've got a pretty good offensive line there, which is something he's never had at the Texans.
And it would give Dennis Allen an opportunity to really be successful in his second stint as a head coach, which is probably the reason why they're moving so much capital to try to acquire him. I did think it was interesting, though. Mitch Trubisky ended up going to the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers could have obviously been in the mix for Deshaun Watson. They have dealt with a similar type of situation with Ben Roethlisberger earlier in his career, but instead gone and picked up Mitch Trubisky. I'm of the mind, if Mitch would have gone to any other organization, any other franchise, I kind of would have been like, yeah, whatever. Like he is who he is. I think going to Pittsburgh, and maybe I'm way off base here, but I'd love to get your thoughts on this. I think that he could have kind of a Ryan Tannehill type resurgence where he's never going to be the best quarterback in the league. He's not going to go out there and throw for 4,500 yards and 50 touchdowns, But I think if you put him in a good organization, surround him with enough talent, he can be successful. What's your take on Mitch Trubisky landing in Pittsburgh?
I think the Tannehill comparison is a stroke of genius. If you I might it massage your ego a little bit, but I think it's fantastic.
Thank you. I need it.
I think it's exactly what Mitch Trubisky needs, which is a strong running game, good play action game, and using his mobility, which is the thing that Tannehill, with all the turnovers he had in Miami and all of the the inconsistencies he had there, getting with a strong running game, getting with a play action game, and a coach who's calm, competent, keeps people held to account. And you've seen what the results have been at the Titans since Tannehill went there, and I think that's no different to Trubisky. I think Trubisky was a victim of circumstance. He should have been taken 2 overall. It should have been either of the other 2 QBs that went subsequently. But for what he did have, Mitch, when he's not thinking, is a very competent quarterback. So 2-minute Mitch was a thing. Legitimately, it was a thing. 2-minute Mitch, when I'm not having to think about the plays because he's done them. He's not having to think. He can process and he can do. 2-minute Mitch was money. That was money Mitch. But having Mitch having to think and then process and look at coverages and things like that, not half-field reads, not helping him out with floods and levels, all things that Nagy didn't do that competent offensive play callers do, even for people like Aaron Rodgers. We saw those concepts being run by the Green Bay Packers last year. If it works for Rodgers, why wouldn't it work for Trubisky? Yeah. And it makes things more simple for a quarterback. So with a competently run team, it makes sense. The Steelers are definitely a competently run team. The consistency, you can't have that level of consistency without a man at the top who's keeping everybody under him held to account and putting people in positions to succeed where their strengths lie. It's been the same at Belichick and it's the same at Tomlin. Consistent success based upon putting people in a position that suits their skill set best and keeping people held to account to know your role and do your job. So for Mitch Trubisky, eliminate some of the processing, make things a little bit more simplified in terms of reads, and he'll be a more than competent comparison to Tannehill. So I think it's for the money that they've spent and for the opportunity it gives Trubisky, I think it's a great signing all round for them.
Yeah, I really hope it works out for him. And again, once he went to the Steelers, you're like, okay. And I applaud the Steelers for, they could have easily taken on the situation that's going on with Deshaun Watson, but they decided to go with somebody else and give him a shot. Perhaps they're drafting a quarterback. He could get Mike Glennon out of there from his starting spot, but I'm glad that he's going to get an opportunity to start for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I think for the Bears fans, we should just chill out. Like, you know what? Mistakes were made and picks were drafted and whatever. And what is in the past is in the past. We can root for Mitch Trubisky moving forward. But in any event, geez Louise, I don't want to keep you too long. So I do want to thank you for, by the way, coming back and doing this back to back. It's unheard of. It's unprecedented on the Sick Podcast with Adam Rake. We've never had a repeat guest, I don't think. And I don't think we've had one who did back to back. I appreciate you coming on. We appreciate your insight. What else do you got going on in the next couple of weeks? Where can people find you? I know that you're very active all over the interwebs, but where can people see you next?
So the very next show is actually later today. We're going live and we're doing an all-22 breakdown of Larry Ogunjobi and the guard center that we have taken in free agency. So that's going to be on X's with the O's special on the Patreon on the Tape Never Lies network. So that's thetapeneverlies.com. So what we've seen today with that tape breakdown, it's like an extended interactive live with the audience show where we go through for probably an hour and a half to 2 hours, literally breaking down the tape. And then Sunday, we're back on the draft mob looking at the NFL draft. We actually have a defensive tackle, stroke defensive end from Appalachian State coming on as a guest. We're going to look at his tape and interview him live as well. So our audience will be able to take part in that. And that's the next couple of things. And then, hopefully at some point in the future, back on with you again when we've got some more things to talk about. But again, thank you for having me on.
Don't threaten us with a good time because I'll do it. And I know that Phil and Shane, listen, I'm not going to take it. Listen, I want, obviously, what you saw today is a small piece of what you're going to get on the Tape Never Lies network. They go deeper into it. Phil's a lot smarter than me and asks better questions. So you'll get a more comprehensive look at these guys. We just got a little taste, little preview. But we do appreciate you taking the time and breaking down some of these signings And of course, as the Bears move on through free agency, we will bring you back. You are one of our favorites. You're over. By the way, you're over. Like that, you didn't know what the phrase over meant. Anybody who follows me know that I love using wrestling parlance. And the term over is how wrestlers talk about being very popular. You get a pop from the crowd. I'm over. And it's a thing, and you're like, oh my God, am I over? Like, you didn't understand it. D'Lo Brown let you down that he never told you what that meant.
Well, there is another over. Just a bit of breaking news. It looks like La'el Collins is post-June first cut for the Dallas Cowboys. So
oh, wow.
That looks like that's going through. And again, he's a guy that has played offensive tackle and guard for the Cowboys, done both well. So again, in terms of a free agent pickup that you could get without hurting compensation, that's definitely one for the Bears to take a look at. I think he was owed $10 million this year. Again, with not signing James Daniels, we've got that $10 million.
It is, yeah. Like, he would be a fantastic addition. I got to be honest with you, Dallas Cowboys. You know what? You could have saved yourself a lot of trouble. Just release Zeke. Like, of all the guys that you should be getting rid of Zeke would have probably saved you a lot of heartache, and you could have kept him on. I don't know the cap details, but you could have kept. I would rather have Amari Cooper and Collins over Zeke, but I don't know. What do I know?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a good idea to have more pieces than less pieces. Just a simple thing.
Simple addition. All right. Well, George, thanks again. Thank your wife for letting you coming on again. I know you had it. Listen, I understand the dance that we have to make sometimes. So I appreciate you. Appreciate the missus allowing this, and of course our overlords, Phil and Shane, for allowing this as well. We love them, and thank you so much for being here. And we'll talk soon.
Slanjivar.
Absolutely. There he goes. The great George Bayless, a.k.a. Bellissimo. We had to bring him back. It's what we had to do. When we have guests that are extremely popular, we want to bring them back and get their insights. And it feels like, again, listen, Sammy tells me before we come onto these shows, he's like, Rank, keep it a type 20, type 25, and then we're going to be good to go. And then it's 50 minutes in, and I'm like, listen, what do you want me to do? I cut it short. We're going to talk about this all day. But in any event, go check out George tonight and Draft Factor Phil and the O's when they're doing the Tape Never Lies Network. Go check them out. Get a deeper dive into some of the players that we were talking about. And, of course, to go back to what we talked about at the top of the show, I do know that we want to be like that meme on Twitter. We're poking the stick. Like, see something. Realize this is going to be something that plays out. It's like going and seeing the Zack Snyder cut of the Justice League. Sometimes you got to go through it all, see the full process, take some breaks, go watch some college basketball, go enjoy some time with your family, do whatever you got to do. Eventually the news will happen when it happens. You don't need to keep refreshing Twitter or anything like that. Keep refreshing this feed, though. We do appreciate you liking and subscribing these videos, downloading the Sick Podcast with Adam Rank, wherever you download podcasts and all that stuff. So we will be back Tuesday to do a live Q&A once again. The guest, TBD. I have not booked that far in advance. I think I do. You know what's funny is I think I have a guest, and I think I forgot who it was. But it doesn't matter. They're going to be awesome. And then we'll be back the following week, and hopefully we'll have some more news for you. So for George Bayless, a.k.a. Bellissimo, for Sammy, and for me, thank you so much for checking out this Sick Podcast with Adam Rank. And it's actually, Sammy, why don't you play our animation?
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Adam Rank on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.